Welcome to Andy Staples on 3. Happy Friday. I am home from SEC Media Days. What a week. Got some more stuff today from Dallas. Had a great chat with Kentucky defensive lineman Deone Walker. That's a guy, if you are a fan of an NFL team that may have a very, very high draft pick next year, you may be learning a lot about Deone Walker. But Deone Walker is he's a force. And great interview with him. Had a lot of fun talking to him. We also talked to Nick Roush of Kentucky Sports Radio about what Kentucky is expecting this season. How do things change? Remember, Mark Stoops very close to going to Texas A&M, and then that didn't happen, and now he's back. And they have some high expectations, at least internally. I don't know if the external expectations are that high, but internally they are very, very high. Also, we're going to talk to Billy Liucci of TexAgs.com about Texas A&M and their expectations this season. Strange year one, because Mike Elko is a first-year coach who doesn't feel like a first-year coach because he used to be the defensive coordinator at Texas A&M. He was gone for 2 years as the Duke head coach, and then right back. Goat Dog says Deone Walker not getting in the transfer portal was big for Kentucky. You're going to hear Deone Walker talk about that and why he's still at Kentucky. It's a very interesting answer. But first, a little bit of news. Alabama's Board of Trustees is going to vote Friday about naming the field at Bryant-Denny Stadium after Nick Saban, and this has got to happen. This is an obvious choice here. They could have said, well, Mr. Denny has the chimes. We could just name it Bryant Saban Stadium, but I think Nick Saban Field at Bryant-Denny Stadium has a very nice ring to it. The dedication would be at the USF game on September 7th, which I find funny because that USF game last year was probably one of Nick Saban's more nerve-wracking games at Alabama, the one in Tampa. But it is the one that said, where he said before the game, we're going to start Tyler Buchner at quarterback, and then probably in his mind is like, that'll shut everybody up. And it did. Any noise around Jalen Milroe ceased after that. I was like, yep, Jalen Milroe's the guy. Sounds good. Ryan in the chat says, I thought it would be Bryant Saban Stadium too. You got to make sure Denny's okay with that. I didn't realize he's not alive anymore. And again, he does have the chimes. He has Denny chimes already. But I think Nick Saban Field at Bryant-Denny Stadium, it works. It just works. I'm curious to see, will they have a kind of a graphic along with it on the field? Like the Nick Saban practice hat. I don't know. He didn't wear that during games, so I don't know if you're going to do that. But that practice hat did become synonymous with Saban in his later years at Alabama, especially because the recruits would all wear it in their photos. So I don't know. There's a lot you can do with that. Other news. On Thursday, Utah State fired Coach Blake Anderson officially. Now, they had announced that they planned to fire him a couple weeks ago. There was a contractual deal where they had to give notice, and then they would fire him. His attorney, Tom Mars, had said when they gave notice that they were going to fire him that there was going to be some information that would come out that would probably change things. It did not come out. Nothing changed. He was officially fired on Thursday. Mars says they're going to pursue, quote-unquote, all legal remedies to get, I would assume, to get Blake Anderson's buyout at this point because he's not going to get the job back. But at issue is whether Anderson reported an arrest of one of his players on a domestic violence charge in a timely fashion. And there's quite a bit of argument about that. One of the associate ADs was also fired in this case. So we'll find out more as that goes on because I don't think that one is over yet. One coach who is trying not to get fired, and in this case, it would be just for not winning games, nothing off the field, but is trying to keep this job, is Sam Pittman. Sam Pittman was in Dallas on Thursday with Arkansas, and this is a coach, I think, if we look around the country, who's on the hottest seat. We've talked about Dave Aranda at Baylor. We've talked a little bit about Billy Napier at Florida, but Sam Pittman is the one I think that everybody points to that says, this is the guy that has to turn things around right now or it's over. Bobby Petrino comes in to call the plays. Now, I think the biggest mistake Sam Pittman made at this point was when Kendall Briles, the offensive coordinator he had from the beginning of his tenure at Arkansas, when Kendall Briles left for TCU, he brought in Dan Enos to run the offense. And if you watch that offense last year, it was just a disaster. So the Enos hire was pretty terrible for Sam Pittman's tenure. Bobby Petrino comes in, which is very weird because, one, Bobby Petrino is the last really good head coach at Arkansas. He was fired, and we all remember why. We all remember the motorcycle accident. We all remember the story that was told about the motorcycle accident. We all remember the truth about the motorcycle accident. And it's awkward. It's awkward. It's also awkward because Bobby Petrino was hired last year by Texas A&M to help save that tenure with Jimbo Fisher, and that did not work. Now, the difference is Jimbo Fisher is a play-calling head coach, is his own coordinator. Sam Pittman is not a coordinator, has never been a coordinator, does not call plays. So Bobby Petrino will have carte blanche to call plays. And I don't get the sense that Bobby Petrino hire was made to backdoor Bobby Petrino back into the Arkansas head coaching job. I get the sense that if things go wrong and they have to fire Sam Pittman, they'll look around. But Sam Pittman is determined to keep this job. If Bobby Petrino can do what he's done at various other stops and get this offense going, Talon Green, they bring him in to play quarterback from Boise State. If he can get them going, then there's a chance this could work. But it is a brutal schedule. Sam Pittman on Thursday said what they're planning to do this season. And he explained it, but I'm still not sure I understand it.
We know our fans deserve a team that competes at the highest level. We're committed to making that happen. The support from our Razorback community has not wavered. It fuels our drive to turn things around. Our focus is to embrace the hog, which means we need to be tough, we need to be together, we need to be consistent, accountable, and do it with pride.
Embrace the hog. He said what it meant. I still don't know what it meant, but I do know that I have embraced the hog at many a barbecue restaurant, and it has always worked out for me. So, Razorbacks, you embrace that hog, I think it's going to work out for you too. We'll see. But the schedule is absolutely brutal for Arkansas. They're at Oklahoma State in the non-conference. This is not a year to have to go to Stillwater and play Ollie Gordon and company. The Oklahoma State offensive line is super old. This is a team that played for the Big 12 championship last year. And then you get into SEC play. Listen to this stretch. At Auburn, Texas A&M in Jerry World, Tennessee and LSU. And I realize Tennessee and LSU are at home. Don't care. That's going to be rough. They go to Mississippi State. They play Ole Miss. They play Texas. Finish the season at Missouri. If Sam Pittman keeps his job, he has freaking earned it, everybody. The hog will have been fully embraced because the odds are stacked against him. This schedule is rough. You know, we talk about Florida and Billy Napier and the schedule he faces. We're not even talking about the schedule Sam Pittman faces, but this thing is absolutely brutal. So we will find out if the hog is being embraced fully. They're going to have to hug that hog as hard as they can to get through this one. One of the teams that they'll be playing this year, the Auburn Tigers. There's a lot of talk this week about how tough it is to play in Jordan-Hare. And you watch this show, you know that's the truth. You've heard me say that many, many, many times, that there are days in Jordan-Hare where you could send the 85 Bears in there and they wouldn't win. And I think Hugh Freeze is very happy about that, very excited about that. But more than anything, the impression I got from Hugh Freeze in his appearance at SEC Media Days on Thursday was that he is much more comfortable doing what he's doing this year. You know, last year he gets to Auburn and basically goes against everything he'd done in his entire coaching career. You know, when he was head coach at Ole Miss, he called the plays. When he was head coach at Liberty, he called the plays. When he was the head coach at Lambeth in the NAIA, he called the plays. He gets in there, he hires Philip Montgomery, who doesn't run his offense, to install the offense and to call the plays. And it seems like Hugh Freeze just did not enjoy working with an offense that wasn't his own, didn't feel like he could jump in when he needed to jump in. So he talked about how things feel this year.
There's a comfort level in our building right now for me that I think is breeding confidence into our players. And, that's, when I walk into the offensive room now, every single person in there, every single person has worked with me before. And it's made it, and I love the energy that Durkin and Charles Kelly and the defensive staff are bringing over there, organized to a T and bring great energy. So it's made me a lot more comfortable.
Comfortable. That's what he kept saying over and over. And the flip side of that is how uncomfortable he probably was last year. So, he brought Peyton Thorne to media days. Peyton Thorne was there answering questions the whole time. And some of those questions were straight up either to Peyton Thorne or to Hugh Freeze. Why is he still here? Because Freeze gave him a vote of confidence before the bowl game, looked really bad in the bowl game. But Freeze really likes what he's got right now. And he talked about DJ Durkin and Charles Kelly running the defense. I think he feels like he can let that side of the ball be coached, not worry about that. Let them do their thing, and he can run the offense. And I'm telling you right now that in-helmet communication, the ability for him to talk to the quarterback directly up until the 15-second mark of the play clock, he's one of the ones who will benefit the most from that. You look at Auburn's schedule, it's not easy. You've got the usual suspects, of course. They play Georgia, they play Alabama, but they also play Oklahoma. We've talked about how big that Auburn game is going to be. They're at Missouri. They're at Kentucky. We'll talk about the Wildcats a lot more today, and you'll probably come away thinking, oh, yeah, game in Lexington is going to be tough. They also have the non-conference game against Cal. Now, they went out there last year and won. Cal will come to Jordan-Hare this year. Jaden Ott, one of the best running backs in the country. If you don't know about him, you're going to find out about him. But that's a game that Auburn had better be careful with. And Christopher, I don't know if it's Christopher Jordan or Jordan in the chat, but he thanks me for pronouncing Shug Jordan's name properly, as in Jordan-Hare Stadium. Have to, Christopher. Shug Jordan and my mom are from the same hometown of Selma, Alabama. Trust me, even though that side of the family all went to Alabama, they're very aware of how one of the hometown heroes' names is pronounced. So we made sure I knew that long before I became a sports writer or a person who does shows on YouTube. So I'm very excited to see Auburn this year. I really am, because I didn't understand the decision to not call plays by Hugh Freeze. It didn't make any sense. It didn't make any sense when Gus Malzahn did it when he was at Auburn either. This is what Hugh Freeze is best at. He's added some good pieces through the portal in recruiting. Everybody's excited about Cam Coleman, the receiver. This is the time that they should make a leap. And you remember at Ole Miss, year 2 was when he started to really scare people. I think this is what's going to happen. There'll be some. Now, they played Georgia tough. They should have beaten Alabama last year. 4th and goal from 31. Got to rush more than 2. But they were that close. Auburn's going to beat some people this year. I'm telling you right now. Auburn is going to beat some people this year. The question is, will Kentucky beat some people it's not supposed to beat? The stat that always follows Mark Stoops around is that he's only beaten 2 teams in SEC play that finished with a 500 or better record in the SEC in 12 years. That has to improve. There have to be some games that Kentucky goes into that they're not supposed to win, that they win. That's how you evolve. That's how you get to that next level. And that is exactly where Stoops plans to take this team. So remember, he was flirting with Texas A&M. Probably would have been there if not for some Texas A&M regents saying, you know what? I don't know that we want to do this because we're going to have to guarantee him about the same amount we guarantee Jimbo Fisher because Kentucky pays him a lot already. So Mark Stoops comes in with, I would think, probably higher expectations because of that. He's taking Kentucky to 8 straight bowl games. As he'll explain, that's a pretty big deal.
You know, we have been to 8 straight bowl games. There's only 8 teams in the country that have done that. I think only 2 in the SEC besides us, Alabama and Georgia, and of course Oklahoma, who hasn't been in the league, but they've done it as well. But that's not nothing. But we want to improve. You know, and that's the message with the team ultimately. We got to get better. We got to find a way to make those plays in critical moments to push us over the top. You know, we're not interested in just existing. I'm not here, I'm not coaching, I'm not back for the 12 years just to exist. You know, we want to find a way to improve, use these rules, whatever it is, to make changes, to make that jump, to get to the next level.
We're not interested in just existing. That's a hell of a quote. Now they got to stop just existing. It's up to Mark Stoops. It's up to the Wildcats to make that happen. How do you make that happen? You make it happen with special players. Kentucky has a few of those, but the most special is probably Deone Walker. Massive defensive tackle who can also play out on the edge. This guy is one of the most interesting players in the country. You'll hear me talk to him about, I thought he probably might have been one of the most tampered with players in the country just because of his skill level and where he fits and how few of him there are. In fact, there's only one of him. And I would say that every other team in the country except for Michigan, because Michigan's got Mason Graham and Kenneth Graham, who I think are both first-round prospects. That's the only team I would say wouldn't trade one of their starting defensive tackles right now for Deone Walker. I think everybody else would. And I'm talking about Georgia. I'm talking about Alabama. I'm talking about Ohio State. They all would. But Deone Walker's back at Kentucky. Big Zero is a Wildcat. Listen to him explain why. We are here with the King Wildcat, Deone Walker. And like right here, the King Wildcat. Like that might be a good nickname for you. King Wildcat. Can we do that? Can we start that whole thing?
If the fans want to, hey,
listen,
all glory to them.
Branding, NIL. We got okay, what nicknames have you been called throughout the years?
I don't really like this one anymore, but Big D.
Big D, okay. Well, we're in Dallas. That's what people call this whole town. So
Big D, D1.
D1's good. Like when you're in high school, they start calling you D1. I like that.
But it was really how you spell my name. My name got the number 1.
That's true. Deone. That's right.
You know, but DD, my friends from back home.
I was going to say, is that a relative or okay?
Yeah.
All right.
That's really it.
Yeah, I figured when somebody's got a name that starts with D, everybody just calls them D or DD because it's just so easy.
Yeah.
But yeah, King Wildcat, I would go with it. You brought the fan to SEC Media Days. I like this. This is like, I live in Florida, so I feel like this is the type of thing I need to be thinking about is carrying around a fan constantly.
Yeah, you know, Slacks, our communications person.
Susan Lax, greatest SID in America. That's right.
Yeah, she gave it to me on the flight here, actually.
Nice.
I'm like, I love you.
She's like, Deone, it is 100 degrees everywhere in this place. You're gonna need this in a suit.
Yeah, and I'm already feeling it.
This is so. What has this experience been like? When you're going around, you're getting asked all these. What is the craziest question you gotten today?
I've really got that many questions. Just talking about my receiver shoes. And talk about how it feels to play for Mark Stoops.
Yeah. Well, how does it feel to play for Mark Stoops?
It's great. You know, I wouldn't have chose anywhere else or anybody else to play for. You know, Coach Stoops, he's a great person. He's a family person. You know, he's not just a great coach, but you can tell like he has all the right morals too.
Right.
You know, he's a loyalty person, and he's going to reward hard work over anything. You know.
So this is a weird one but I saw this scene. I'm not going to name any names, but I was in one of your away games your freshman year.
and I thought it was interesting. One of the opposing players came up to you on the field after the games. We'd love to have you here next year. And I imagine throughout your career, like after your freshman year, after last year, with 360-pound dude who can effectively rush off the edge and play up the middle, like people around you probably got a lot of phone calls.
Mm-hmm.
How is it? What you just told me sounds like a good reason to still be at Kentucky, but how does that decision get made?
For me or just people around?
For you.
For me, after our Louisville game, you know, a bunch of that talk was being made.
Yeah.
I actually called him, you know,
Yeah.
crying to him like, Coach, if you're going to leave, just tell me. Let me know now. You know?
Yeah.
But he said that he was going to stay loyal to me, stay loyal to the university, so I had to do that for him.
So, yeah, that's right. That was that day. All of that stuff was going on, and so by that night, you find out he's staying and everything's cool. So, wow, I've forgotten that all of that happened within a few hours. Yeah. So, what is this past year been like for you? Because, you know, I felt like your freshman year, they were kind of figuring out how to use you. Now they know exactly how to use you. As you come into this year, what can you do better than you've done before?
You know, one of my big cons was my pad level, you know. So I've been working, doing bear crawls, you know.
God.
Yeah. My high school coach called me after the season, do 10 bear crawls a day. I said, yes, coach, you know.
That is a punishment in the football world, by the way. Everybody knows this. You mess up, you do bear crawls. But so you're voluntarily doing bear crawls every day.
Yeah, because it helps me work with my conditioning and my pad level, you know. I like to do a lot of my back, like footwork drills under the shoe, learning how to stay low.
That was my next question,
you know?
is how much shoot work are you doing?
Yeah, doing quite a bit.
For those who don't know, the chutes are where the linemen go during practice, and they are these metal. They're made with these thick metal tubes, and they're about that high off the ground. So if you get too high, you're getting smacked in the head. So Deone is making sure he stays low so he doesn't get smacked in the head.
Yes, sir.
For lack of a better term. But can you feel that? Do you feel like you're bending better when you're playing now? Or
yeah, I feel like I'm getting less exhausted as I'm bending, you know, still running, still going full speed.
It's so hard when you're as tall as you are, because you don't see a lot of interior D linemen as tall as you. A lot of them are, because everybody's like, oh, Grady Jarrett was huge. No, Grady Jarrett was the perfect height because he didn't have to bend as much. Aaron Donald was the perfect height. Yeah. So, but are you 6'6" or
6'8"?
6'8".
Sir.
Holy crap. So yes, the bending part is the hard part. But how much does that help when you do get moved around and you are, you know, closer to the edge and dealing with offensive tackles who are, you know, that size?
I feel like it helps a lot just because of my length. You know, Missouri game, I got a sack just because I extended and spun off the offensive tackle, you know. So I feel like it was just a great plus to have long arms.
340 plus in spinning?
Yes, sir.
When did you add the spin move?
Man, I had it in high school.
But you always have it against high schoolers. Like when did you realize you could do it in college?
I didn't know I could really do it in college until about last year. You know, I tried it a little bit my freshman year, but last year was really like solidified. Okay, yeah, I can do it. You know,
you hear that, NFL teams? He's got a spin move too.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, rip. So your swim is probably pretty spectacular too with those long arms.
Yeah, I say I'm more of a arm over type of person than a rip guy.
All right.
I'm really more of a push pull.
Well, especially with this new flexibility too.
Yeah.
Because you're going to be able to stay balanced because you're pushing and pulling, but they're pushing you at the same time. Like you got to have that balance to make sure you can set up the move.
Yes, sir.
So, well, God bless you with your bear crawls. Did you do any bear crawls here today, or are you gonna make it up at home?
Gotta make it up tomorrow.
All right, 20 bear crawls tomorrow for Deone Walker. Thank you so much.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
That was awesome.
Ryan in the chat. So we're just supposed to act like you wouldn't have bolted to College Station if he could have. You're talking about Mark Stoops here. Yeah, I think he was going. And I think the Texas A&M Regents decided, you know what, I don't know if this is what we want to do. Ross Bjork, the athletic director at Texas A&M at the time, who's now at Ohio State, I definitely think that's who he wanted, but the final approvals did not go through. For Deone Walker, that's great because he's happy at Kentucky. He's happy playing for Mark Stoops, and that's what he wanted to do. It would have been pretty interesting to see what happened if Stoops had left. Would Deone Walker have just, would he have followed A&M? Would he have said, you went somewhere else, I want to go somewhere else, and then just been on the market? Because like I said earlier, Michigan's the only school I can think of that maybe wouldn't replace one of its starting defensive tackles with Deone Walker. So Kentucky has a really special one there. Really special. Anonymous in the chat. Dude is 6'8", 350 with agile feet. Deone is a true unicorn. Yes. Although King Wildcat works. I love that. The Wildcat with a crown on the chain. It was pretty awesome. Well, let's talk more about Kentucky because this is a very interesting year of transition. New quarterback coming in Brock Vandegrift. New offensive coordinator in Bush Hamdan, who, by the way, we're going to have on the show not long from now. So excited to hear from him as well. Anonymous in the chat. Nah, he turned A&M down. They just save face by acting like they pulled the offer. No, Anonymous, that is not how. I know people close to the man. They didn't want the image of being turned down. It's not how it happened. I don't care if you think you know people close to Mark Stoops. I know people closer to Texas A&M and to Mark Stoops, and that's not how it happened. So, but Mark Stoops is at Kentucky. And Deone Walker's at Kentucky. Brock Vandegrift's at Kentucky. Jamon Dumas-Johnson is at Kentucky. Chip Trayanum is now at Kentucky. They're big expectations this year. And they should. We talked to our friend Nick Roush from KSR, Kentucky Sports Radio, and his spectacular hat at Media Days. Here with Nick Roush at Kentucky Sports Radio. We just talked to Deone Walker, who...
Big guy.
Massive.
Enormous human.
I mean, you're an enormous human, and he's more enormous than you.
It's one of my proudest pictures is being able to stand next to him and not look tiny.
You feel like a child.
He's massive, and he is movable, but the motor is really what sets him apart.
Well, and the ability to rush off the edge at that size. I don't know that people who have not played football truly understand how difficult it is at that size to be quick enough to deal with offensive tackles and people chipping you. But he can do that when they need him to, and then they can also move him back inside.
Well, and people forget about this play in this game because Ray Davis ran for 280 yards. But the game against Florida last year really broke when Deone dropped back into pass coverage and split somebody in half on his own blitz, and Kentucky picks it off, and they're in the red zone, and it was all she wrote after that.
It's just incredible. So Deone told us, and because my thinking on this has been, there probably has been no player more tampered with in the past 2 years than Deone Walker. Because, like we said, people like that don't exist in real life. Correct. And so everybody needs one.
Oh, you look at the spring portal and how people were overpaying for interior defensive linemen. It's
I'm not
a very
going to
important
specify
position.
Schools and accuse people because I don't know, but I can just tell you everybody who's competing for the national championship would take Deone Walker and start him immediately over whoever they have.
Every single one. Yeah. And I think what adds some validity to your point too is that nobody thought they could get Jordan Davis from Georgia because he's at Georgia, right?
Right.
But I bet people think that Kentucky doesn't have the money. We can outspend them.
So Deone told us that it was actually touch and go for a few hours after the Louisville game. Because remember, Mark Stoops was talking to Texas A&M.
Yeah.
And he said that it wasn't until that night when he heard from Mark Stoops that he's staying that Deone's like, okay, I'm here too.
That's remarkable because we knew how tenuous that moment was, but he's never gone on record to talk about being tampered with. I'm not surprised, like you said, but that is, it makes, you know what else should make Kentucky fans very happy is that I'm pretty sure Deone Walker was the first person Mark Stoops told he was staying at Kentucky.
That's the first person I would tell.
Deone, but yes, I'll be here. You be here too. Stay, please.
But so that whole episode is fascinating. And the fact they could have done a lot of things with SEC Media Days and the schedule. Like you could have put Texas and A&M on the same day or put Texas and Oklahoma on the same day.
Right.
But having Kentucky and A&M on the same day, I'm sure they didn't even think about it.
Right. No, of course
But
not.
how weird is that?
It is
That
weird.
it was really probably a few Texas A&M regents
I mean, it's Ross
away
Bjork.
from being very different.
If he checks a couple more boxes before and doesn't get ahead of his skis,
Yeah.
I mean, now I still had a part in me. It was kind of like John Calipari going to Arkansas,
Right.
where all of the smoke and the steam is there, but you can't really believe that he's going to go through with it and do it until he does. And that's kind of how I was with Stoops, where
Yeah.
it's like, but does he really want? Like, I mean, he is Kentucky, and closer to home, where I'm in the city of Louisville. It was kind of like Charlie Strong going to Texas, where you're like, you've got this great thing going here. Like, do you want to? And it's even much more different for Stoops, where Stoops is. I mean, he's like statue guy right now.
Right,
Kentucky.
right.
I mean, he is
When
Kentucky
Charlie
football.
Strong went to Texas, remember, Texas was 8 years removed from a national title and 4 years removed from playing for a national title.
Mhm.
A&M ain't that.
No, they're. Hey, maybe we'll go to the playoff. Like, that would be good. What was it? 98 was their last conference
They
championship.
won the Big 12 in 98, correct.
And I think that might have even been a share of it as well. So
No,
different.
they had a championship game, so they did win it.
Okay, all right. But nevertheless, like that, making that jump, it's something that we talked about a lot. You wondered, is Stoops going to go? Iowa has always loomed out there, but now, I mean, he's navigated Kentucky and got them to a spot where they're in an SEC with 16 teams, and you feel like they're on solid footing, which is just remarkable to say if you look at Kentucky's history over the years. Because Stoops is his message today is, hey, you know, I'm unsatisfied. Like, the last couple of years weren't great, but going to 8 straight bowl games at Kentucky is not nothing, which is true. The floor has been raised in Lexington.
But that's where I compare Stoops at Kentucky a little bit to Steve Spurrier at South Carolina, where Steve
fair.
Spurrier raised their level of expectations so high that it was actually not sustainable because it was South Carolina.
That's true.
So here's my question to you, because Stoops has raised the level of expectations at Kentucky to an extraordinary degree. They are so much better than they were when he took over. But does the flirtation with Texas A&M now make it where the fan base goes, okay, but now you got to do better than that?
I think it was going to be there regardless, Andy,
Okay.
because we had those 9.
So maybe that's why you do that. Maybe that's why you had that flirtation, because
You
reset
think-
the clock.
Exactly. But if you want to answer the question, can Kentucky get back to 9-10 win seasons? Can they go to a playoff? I mean, we don't have to make big takes about it. You can just say, hey, Brock Vandegrift, former 5-star top 25 overall player. That's their ceiling, because the rest of the roster is pretty loaded. You got 4 out of your 5 offensive linemen returning. Defensive line, best run defense.
Couple
in the
really
SEC.
explosive wide receivers.
And they are
New running back who's pretty damn good.
They've been very hesitant to pump up Brock Vandegrift, say anything good or bad or indifferent.
Yeah.
But if you look at 2 other quarterbacks that are 2 of the best in the league this year, you can see the guy he was behind in Carson Beck. People thought maybe Brock should have been that guy instead of Beck.
Right.
Beck has some learning lessons at Auburn, and then he's a first-round draft pick against Kentucky, right?
Yep.
Brady Cook, I think, is the Brady Cook story from a year ago, especially their skill set, because Cook has the legs.
Right.
Where Vandegrift's got some talent around him. Baron Brown, very fast. If you're playing that video game, he's the fastest guy you'll play with on there. So he has some tools. Brock doesn't need to do everything, but he can raise their ceiling to where they could legitimately, we could be looking at that Texas game, Andy, in the second to last week of the season to say, is this for a spot in the playoff? It could happen.
That would be incredible. Now, the Brock Vandegrift story, and Kentucky fans, I'm sure, have gone deep into this and understand it. But for those who aren't Kentucky or Georgia fans or Oklahoma fans, because they'll know about this too.
Oh, yeah.
Lincoln Riley had identified Brock Vandegrift as his guy for the class of 2021.
Correct.
And for those who don't know how Lincoln Riley recruits quarterbacks, it's actually a pretty noble way to do it. Like, he picks a guy, that's his guy. And he doesn't pull the I'm offering 2 and the first one who takes it gets it.
Yeah.
Like, when he picks his guy, that's who he's recruiting. Even if that person hasn't committed yet, that's who he wants. He's not going after anybody else. Brock Vandegrift was that guy. He commits to Oklahoma. Only when he decommitted so that he could go to Georgia, which was right next to home.
Yeah, he's from Prince
Avenue. Yeah.
It's 20 minutes away. And what changed his mind too, Andy, it was going to Thanksgiving and his grandma saying, well, This will be our last Thanksgiving for a while.
Right.
And so that could be your sliding doors moment because
Caleb Williams
Yes.
is the person that Lincoln Riley then goes and gets. So given the chance to recruit all these guys, Lincoln Riley actually was targeting Brock Vandegrift before Caleb Williams.
So Kentucky got Caleb Williams is what you're telling me.
Well, no, because I think Caleb Williams would have beat out Stetson Bennett and Carson Beck at Georgia.
That's fair enough. But that potential was there and stirring. And,
right.
And when you talk to people at Georgia, he's got the physical stuff. It's the processing, and he just needs the reps.
Which is what Carson Beck needed before he became what Carson Beck is now.
And here is another, we're at SEC Media Days. Let's dream big. Let's talk big.
Okay, go for it.
I don't like doing this because Kentucky fans, we've done this quite a bit with close calls at Georgia over the years. But think about this. Beck needed some of that adversity at Auburn to learn. Can't you see a scenario where South Carolina comes to town and they've got Lenora Sellers and it's
another quarterback, by the way, who if they hit their ceiling, changes everything for that team.
And so you could see a scenario where, it's the first big game. Brock throws an early interception, but Kentucky's matches up well with them. So they probably, come back and they win the game by, 2 or 3 scores or something like that. But can't you see a scenario?
Confidence there.
Can't you see a scenario, Andy, where Kentucky's 2 leaders on the offense and defense, and this isn't to discount Deone or any of the other guys, but couldn't you see a scenario where Pop Dumas Johnson, the Georgia linebacker, Brock Vandegrift, the former Georgia quarterback, what if to beat Georgia, you had to go and get them? You had to go. I'm not saying they could, but can you see a third quarter?
Can I be the pea in your Cheerios devil's advocate?
Just imagine a third quarter.
If they were starting at Georgia, they'd still be at Georgia, right?
There's game pressure. Georgia's feeling it. There's guys and there's people down in Marietta who are screaming I knew we should have gotten Brock. I knew Brock was better than Beck. You're right, though. You're right. And the thing that sucks for a guy like Pop Dumas Johnson, I mean, the dude was All-American, but he breaks
It's not his fault.
The guy behind him is just from Georgia and is also going to be an All-American.
Yes, exactly.
That's why we're dreaming big here, right? We're just dreaming big.
But you're talking about week 3.
Early.
And this is the thing that I've enjoyed the most about this SEC Media Days. I don't think anybody said anything particularly interesting other than what Deone said to us. That was pretty interesting.
And maybe Nick Saban just being Nick Saban.
But coming up with these scenarios for these games that maybe you haven't given much thought to.
Right. You're thinking about A&M and Texas.
Right. That game, if it works out that way, let's say Kentucky beats South Carolina week 2, Georgia comes in, and that game's tight at halftime. The whole country's tuning over to that game.
It's the first SEC on ABC between 2 SEC teams, right? And you have that game. There's another one too, Andy, later on the season.
Wisconsin's that day too, by the way.
Auburn coming to Lexington. Hugh Freeze.
Auburn has so many of these games, by the way.
Right. Yes. But there's a moment where you don't think about it because they have so many of those games. Yeah. But what if losing to Kentucky at Kroger Field? It could be the difference between 8-4 and 10-2. I mean, Auburn could be a playoff team,
and that's what I've said about the Auburn-Oklahoma game. So people don't realize that after Auburn plays Oklahoma, which is Oklahoma's first SEC road game, by the way, and Oklahoma plays Texas next. But after Auburn plays Oklahoma, which is their 5th consecutive home game, at Georgia, at Missouri, at Kentucky. That's your whole season right there.
Yeah. So it's fun. This has been a great week. It's been so much fun being here. I've been wearing my stupid cowboy hat everywhere. Stupid.
That is not a stupid cowboy hat.
Beautiful.
It's tremendous.
My wife thinks it's stupid. My kids think it's hilarious.
The Kentucky blue of it all is what makes it amazing.
And I got it at the Derby. Is anything more Kentucky than that? Exactly. I don't know. Maybe Mark Stoops winning 9 games this year. That'd be pretty great.
Why 9? Why not 10? Why not make it easy to get into the playoff? Why you got to make it an argument?
We only do 7 to 9. You don't do 8. You don't do 10. That's how we do it at Kentucky.
Strictly odd numbers at Kentucky?
Exactly.
Man, it's going to be so much fun, though.
It is.
It is going to be so much. And to watch Deone Walker. So let's be real. This guy's a top 5 NFL prospect.
Yeah. No bones about it. And he's playing around a bunch of old, big guys on that defensive line. And, I mean, watching defensive tackles, Andy, on a down-to-down basis isn't that much fun. But when you watch Kentucky, just look for 0 because it was the Josh Allen experience back in 2018 where I felt like I was doing my job a disservice because I just got stuck Josh Allen watching.
But it was worth it.
Yeah.
And Josh Allen was the best player on that team. And that was a very good team.
And if you go back to that 2018 season, I mean, they were returning similar experience defensively.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you had a known quantity in Benny Snell.
Yeah.
That made the big difference for the offense. Yeah. But these receivers are pretty good. They shake off their sophomore slump. They're explosive.
And then, like, Chip Trainum's
no
shot
joke.
liver here.
Right, exactly.
So,
I mean,
this is going to be very interesting. Very interesting things in Lexington. And, yeah, Deone Walker, he is the one you want to watch. I love the 0 on the Giant
it looks
guys.
good.
Love the 0.
Good. It's the single digits on the defensive lineman too that I like. Kentucky
Tremendous.
has Octavius Oxendown and he wears 8 because of the double O's. That's just like that's so college football. It's beautiful.
Greatest sport in America. Nick Roush, thank you so much.
Appreciate it.
Yes, lest you've forgotten, Kentucky also has a defensive lineman named Octavius Oxendine. Hi, Bob. Can this season get here already? Great question. AJ Adams, there's going to be some real carnage in the SEC season this season. Mark my words, you're absolutely right. All these games that we are so sure we know what's going to happen as we talk about them months before they happen. We don't know anything yet. We don't know anything. And that brings us to a topic that we've broached a little bit already today. And that's Texas A&M. We mentioned Texas A&M through the lens of Mark Stoops talking to Texas A&M after last season and the fact that he almost became their coach, but he did not become their coach. He's still at Kentucky, which is why Deone Walker is still at Kentucky. Mike Elko is the new head coach at Texas A&M, and it's one of those situations where he doesn't feel like a first-year head coach because he was Duke's head coach for the past 2 seasons, did a great job there. But before that, he was Texas A&M's defensive coordinator. So he was actively involved in recruiting a lot of the guys on Texas A&M's roster. He has actually coached some of the players on Texas A&M's roster, and he understands the place very well. It's not like he's getting dropped in and, you see these coaches, well, they, hadn't set foot on campus until they got hired. That's not the case with Mike Elko. He knows it very well, understands the expectations, understands what's at stake at Texas A&M. And I find that whole situation fascinating because while it's not the roster that most people think it is because they had a number 1 recruiting class 2 years ago, it's still a very good roster. It is a top half of the SEC, top third of the SEC roster. And that's why their Vegas win total is so high, despite the schedule that's pretty hard. They open with Notre Dame. They go to Florida. They got Missouri at home. They play LSU. They're at Auburn. They play Texas. This is not an easy schedule. But the Aggies have a better roster than a lot of the teams on their schedule. And we'll see how Elko can do it because Elko did not always have a better roster at Duke. And he did a very good job with them. Now he's going to see his old quarterback, Riley Leonard, in game 1 because Riley Leonard transferred from Duke to Notre Dame. But this is a very intriguing season for the Aggies because it feels like they're kind of lying in wait. We're not talking about them very much. We're going to talk about them a lot right now, though. Billy Liucci from TexAgs.com talking Aggies.
We are here with Billy Liucci of TexAgs.com. And Billy, has this been a weird week for you with 3 solid days of everybody talking about Texas, and now here come the Aggies?
It's been a couple years of this Texas OU buildup, particularly Texas because I cover A&M, but also what happened on the field last year.
Right.
Which is ironic because OU beat Texas.
Right, but Texas had the better season.
They had the better season, the playoff berth, and I think better prepared in terms of this year's roster.
Right. I don't worry about Oklahoma long term, but if you said which has the better roster this year, I'd probably pick Texas.
Yeah, and I've been impressed. I was impressed with Venables the other day.
Yeah,
and I think there's been an uptick.
Yeah,
at first I was going, man, what? I just think they're like one step ahead in terms of the roster, but it has been interesting. And then you combine that with A&M being in the final day.
Yeah.
So, and it's, look, let's be honest. If you looked at the preseason rankings, it's A&M and it's 3 other teams that are going to be towards the bottom of the rankings.
Right.
And you know how that final day goes.
Yes, and everybody's trying to get out. And
I would have personally loved to see A&M and Texas on the same
That
day.
would have been hilarious. I'm sure politically they wouldn't do it.
That would have been awesome. If he was just a little bit, really wanted to have some fun.
Oh, yeah.
I always like my preference for covering the team is day 2, always for me.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, because day 1's a mess.
Yeah.
Nobody knows what's going on. Day 2, everybody's settled in. Everybody's excited. Day 3, you're starting to drag. Day 4, your bags are packed.
Yeah, absolutely.
But so here's the deal. We just saw Mike Elko in the big room, and he comes across as fully prepared, as understanding. Like, I feel like of the first-year head coaches around the country this year, nobody's better prepared for the situation that he's walked into than Mike Elko, because he was the DC before he took his last job.
Well, he was the DC, so he knows some of the players. He certainly knows an even higher percentage of the talent.
Yeah.
And then also just understanding the place, understanding A&M.
Which matters for A&M especially.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Like the uniqueness of it, but also, Aggies, and I'm an Aggie, and I think a lot of fan bases and which fans become the decision makers. You like to think, we're unique, we're different. So it is an advantage to know it, but also what you don't want to acknowledge, he was here and knew where this place could and needed to get better.
He knew what the problems were,
where the program shortcomings were, where they could do better in terms of, like, say, the NIL space or the facility. So he comes in with a really unique knowledge base, and I promise you, it wasn't like that went away while he coached at Duke. I'm not saying he spent time with it.
No, it's very like we had him on the
lot.
show a few months ago, and it was very clear he was trying to be as diplomatic as possible, but he knew where the warts were and had gone to work on them pretty quickly. Because I asked him a question that was something to the tune of, well, you're inheriting all this talent, and kind of look on his face was like, it's not what you think, man.
Yeah. I've described it as this. You could go through, you can go on here. We can go with that kick-ass database of y'all's at On3, which I think is the best thing out there.
We appreciate it.
Props Shannon and Andy and company. But I mean that too. I mean, like, the way On3 is covering recruiting is next level. But you can go do that, and the stars still say this is a loaded roster.
Right.
I don't think I'd say loaded, but I'd say it's a nice roster.
Yeah.
And it's a roster that with a coach that is checking every box, and I don't mean in season. I mean from the day he took the job, the hires, the portal, the NIL, the retaining players, who to retain, who to let, what, the offseason, Tommy Moff, like every box you check, the decision to practice Connor Wigman.
Yes. In the spring, when people were like, oh, he doesn't look healthy, but
they made sure, can he re-injure himself? No, he's fine. Then he needs to practice, because they needed that quarterback to run the offense while learning the offense, let the teammates see him out there, and also work that foot from the various angles that come with actually being an athlete playing football. So what I was getting at is, I think he checked all of those boxes along the way, and he is prepared. That roster's not Bama or Georgia, like we were maybe thinking it was threatening to be a couple of years ago, but it's still good enough to beat any team on that schedule when you look at
and that's what's so interesting about this, because A&M comes into this season, and the players who've been at A&M have never had a quiet off season like this. They never had a season they've gone into without a bunch of expectations, without everyone talking about them, because 2 years ago it was they brought in the #1 recruiting class. Is this the year they ascend? Last year it was 2022 was a disaster. Jimbo's on the hot seat. Now we are not even talking about them, but like you just said, they can be competitive in every game on the schedule.
Well, Andy, I'd say they were competitive in every single game on the schedule last year.
Right.
You think about Bama, Tennessee, Ole Miss, in Oxford.
Right, they were in the games.
Final play. Yeah. LSU, third-string quarterback, leads at halftime. And that was with all the stuff you talked about going on. And you bring the steady hand of Mike Elko and that presence and that day-to-day structure.
Yeah.
I think it's just going to build and build. And if they can get out of September, and it's tough, we know this, but it's also not impossible. You draw Notre Dame at home in week 1, Riley Leonard's first game with
Right.
Irish. You go to
Elko's
Florida.
former Duke quarterback.
There's so many storylines there too.
Yeah.
So
And Elko was a former Notre Dame DC.
and Mike Denbrock was probably the runner-up to that OC hire,
Right.
with Colin Klein. There's a bunch of them, but if you, man, like, I think A&M's in that group with like, and you can put one up top, one at the top, but A&M, LSU, Tennessee, Oklahoma.
Yep.
Those 4 teams, I'm going to be like, somebody out of those 4 is going to make the playoffs.
Oh, agreed.
And it's going to be, in my opinion, you look at Connor Wigman, Jackson Arnold, Nico, and Nuss.
Yeah.
You watch whichever one of those 4 quarterbacks has the best year. And I don't mean statistically, just
Right.
when we sit there and
Leading
go,
their
he's
team in the way they
best,
need to lead their team. Yes.
I think that team makes the playoff.
Oh, I agree with that. And I've said I think that's Tennessee out of that group because
I could see it.
Because Tennessee's defense is probably better this year than LSU's.
Yeah.
We'll see with A&M with Nick Scorton coming in as a transfer. And
I think A&M's defense, Andy, is what, if they get there, it's going to be quarterback and defense. When Mike Elko, and he kind of will downplay, and it's different. It's the all shucks. It's the but when he does believe in something, he says it.
Yeah.
He doesn't make like a little joke or or check you like, hey, well, no, he'll say it. And when he came out of spring and made the comment that, I think this could be the best defense I've had at A&M.
We had a couple of really good ones.
They had some really good.
Yeah.
They led the league in run defense a couple of years. They were top 10 at least one year. And when he says that, I'm like, okay.
Well, and I look at A&M and where A&M falls on various schedules. And I there's a game I keep coming back to with with Oklahoma and Auburn. Like they play each other, and it's one of those where it feels like each of the fan bases thinks it's an auto win, and you realize and you want to like shake them and be like, no, neither one of these is an auto. Yeah, Florida A&M feels that way. Like all the Florida fans think they're going to easily beat A&M in the swamp, and the A&M fans are like, well, Florida's supposed to be bad this year. We got that one. Like. One of you is going to lose that game. I hate to tell everybody that.
Well, yeah, and I agree with you on that one. And I think Auburn's one of those too.
Yeah.
Like I'd rather play Auburn early, Florida late, flip-flop those and play Florida.
Yeah, let Florida get beat down by that schedule a little bit. Yeah.
Play Auburn in week 3.
Yeah.
Those are 2 really tough road games for A&M. And they also have to go to South Carolina and to Starkville,
and South Carolina, not necessarily in the position of A&M roster wise, but kind of like has some special players that
good enough to beat anybody.
Yeah, if you're not ready, you're gonna get beat.
Yeah, and look, you go to Florida, man. That Florida's either gonna lose to Miami, and that is going to be a desperate
catastrophe. Yeah. Yep.
Kind of like to me, A&M will get their last shot.
Right.
Like if they lose to Florida and A&M, it's over.
Right.
So I mean, to Miami and A&M, it's over. Or they beat Miami.
Yep. And then it's like, we could start hot. This could be great. Yeah.
In the swamp's going to be like the Aggies kind of have to be a top 10 team to get out of there.
Correct.
So that's a tough game for the Aggies. And I think, it's going to be really tough for Florida.
I'm just trying to make sure I show you the proper Gainesville experience the night before that game. That's what I want to make sure you come away with the right swamp experience.
You kind of have to. I'm skipping a Creed concert for that thing.
Creed's like FSU guys. That's a Tallahassee band.
I did not.
So
know that.
They're not welcomed with arms wide open in Gainesville. So
well, I'm selling a couple of like second row tickets in the Woodlands to Creed. So if any Houston people are at, send me a message.
Can you take the price higher?
No, I'm going face value. I would never do that and disrespect Scott Stapp and company, but. I will be going in November in Austin. So
there you go. Okay, so you're going to get your Creed fix,
and
but you'll also get your
Gainesville
swamp fix. There you go. Perfect. I don't know about you, Billy. I've not been more excited for a season, and I think being here, people keep asking me, "What's the most memorable thing anybody said?" I'm like, nothing. Nobody said anything interesting. Yeah. But what I did is I talked to more people about different games that are going to happen that I hadn't thought about, and I'm like, "Oh my God, what if that happens? What if?" Let me throw this scenario at you because this is the one I've decided.
I got one for you too.
This is the one I've decided is DEF CON 1 greatest, like, must go to game if this scenario works out to be this way?
This is not what I thought, but remind me to go to what I was.
Texas and Texas A&M are each 9-2 going into the game at Kyle Field. Like, I will sleep in your yard that night to be in College Station that day.
There's a little burrow in my yard that I noticed this week.
Oh, okay, I'll fit right
with
in.
baby rabbits.
Oh, cuddly.
So you don't want to sleep. Well, you do, except there was a murder back there. One of the
fox
babies.
Oh no.
We got foxes. We've got hawks. We've got owls. We've got copperheads. We've got
cowboy.
We got a little bit of everything.
I live in Florida. Everything
yeah.
can kill you in Florida too. So I understand. Yeah.
But what you don't expect to kill is a golden retriever, and he accidentally was playing. But anywho, you can stay in the yard.
Thank you.
And you might have to, because it is going to be like that. I agree with you.
It's going to be like that regardless of their records. But imagine that.
I could show you a text I sent yesterday, and I say, could you imagine 9-2, 9-2? If you made me predict today, I'd be like, what about an 8-3 A&M versus a 9-2 Texas?
Just to
spoil a little
it.
Bit less, but maybe.
And there's still a chance at 9-3 depending on how things shake out. Yeah,
but if it's A&M facing Texas, but yeah, 9-2, 9-2. Get back to me if the Aggies do win those two games. We talked about Notre Dame and Florida,
right? Because then there's a possibility. Yeah.
And by the way, I thought you were talking about these games, and you're like, you know what's one that would be insane?
What's that?
Imagine A&M gets by the Irish and the Gators. Look ahead a few weeks, not long. Missouri's gonna come into A&M
right.
undefeated.
Oh yeah.
What about the unexpected showdown of Drink versus Elko at Kyle Field at 11 a.m. with like an unbeaten top 10 Mizzou? And
wow.
If it's an unbeaten A&M team.
Yeah.
It's not crazy.
It's one I hadn't even thought about, but could be the biggest game of the year or the biggest game of the week. Week. Yeah. That's not the 12th, is it?
I think it's the week before.
Okay, then that's good, because the 12th, the biggest game of the week, is still going to be Ohio State at Oregon. But the good news is that's not going to be at 11 a.m. Central. So,
yeah, that's true. That's true.
But that's what I'm so excited about, is all these possibilities. Like, I had not even thought about that game yet. You're absolutely right. If you look at Missouri's schedule, it should be undefeated. Yeah. So it's kind of on A&M to make itself in position for that to be a big game. But I would argue they don't even have to be undefeated there. If they lose one of the bigger ones, that's okay. It's nonstop. This is all it's going to be. I'm going to Big Ten next week, and I guarantee you I'll have like a list of 10 more games that I can't wait for.
Pretty cool. Like, it is. It's unexpected. Like we'll see where the season goes. But there's a week. I usually skip one road game a year. I've just kind of been if there's like a 3 road games in 4 weeks, that's kind of maybe where I'll pick it if I've been to the place a few times. I was looking, when A&M plays at South Carolina, there's a certain date up in Michigan where it's Oregon at Michigan.
Oh, man.
House. I've got like my little Andy Staples style hookups up there.
Oh, yeah.
The only thing that kind of killed my vibe is the Lions are not home that weekend because we doubled.
When he says hookups, Dan Campbell was his college roommate.
But he's not my Michigan hookup.
But he knows some people in town.
Yes,
for sure.
Christina DeRuiter.
Oh, yeah.
Former Tex Agser, was
daughter of Tim DeRuiter.
Running the show there.
Former DC. Yep.
Director of on-campus recruiting.
Yep.
Unfortunately, great for her, she left. Harbaugh created a position for her with the Chargers, and she left. So that was kind of what I was just hoping for. But we've got Marshall at Oregon, so I can put on that bright green.
Marshall Malchow, very big name. If maybe one of those names you have not heard in college football, who's one of the most important people in college football. He's helped build that roster at Oregon and was at A&M before that.
Done a hell of a job.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of smack talk. There's a little group of us, and there's a lot of smack talk every time he comes into Texas trying to take players.
Oh yeah,
not just from A&M but from Texas. And I mean, they're with Lanning and him doing that. They're a threat to anyone in any state right now.
Absolutely. Billy Liucci, you're a threat to everyone in every state. We appreciate you.
We didn't even talk style over here.
Oh, we should. Okay, let's do that. I just learned. I've known this guy for years. I just learned he has a stylist.
A friend that turned stylist, but she's really good. I'm like,
well, who's her other big client besides you?
I'd say her second biggest would be Troy Aikman. So you might see him on Monday Night Football. You'd be like, oh, that's number 2 client. And we're probably not. I don't know if I make the top 10 or 20, but
that's impressive.
She's here in Dallas. She does great work.
I've never thought about having a stylist before. You know, I do a show every day.
You have good style anyway with the suits. And
well, we may have to call Ashley.
Yeah.
And just we'll hook me up.
It's right up the street.
Beautiful.
At Q. We could just drive over there.
Done. Billy
I
Liucci.
took T-Bob shopping this week.
Whoa, hold on. Okay. We had
story.
T-Bob on earlier.
You should have. Oh my God, I wish you had.
Did he make sure to get things that accentuate the chest hair?
No, I got him I got him. I didn't
Right.
not a sugar daddy. I didn't take. We went shopping. I got him into like a Viore long sleeve crew neck.
Oh, okay.
First pair of jeans he's bought. He said in 15 years. So
we're getting T-Bob into the athleisure army.
Yeah,
good.
We were at North Park Mall. I took a couple work calls while we were in adjacent dressing rooms. So we're talking over the stall. It was a real show.
That's the worst rom-com dressing room montage ever, by the way.
I felt like Seth Rogen and Michael Cera when they're trying on one of the dad's clothes and super bad. Yeah. It was not that different than that.
And we will leave you with that image of Billy Liucci and T-Bob Hebert in the rom-com dressing room montage. Thank you, Billy.
All right.
That is Billy Liucci. That is a disturbing image, but that's okay. Because we got a lot out of SEC Media Days. We've actually got more interviews that we've banked that we will be running out here over the next few weeks. But next week, we got ACC Media Days, got Big Ten Media Days. I am heading to Indianapolis for the Big Ten. The ACC will be gathering in Charlotte. I'm sure there'll be plenty to talk about there, with a couple lawsuits against the league by the 2 best football playing members. But the Big Ten, lots of new members. We're talking Texas and Oklahoma, in Dallas, in Indianapolis. We're going to be talking Oregon, Washington, USC, and UCLA joining the Big Ten. All those crazy new games being added to that schedule. It's going to be so much fun. We will talk to you on Monday.